So obviously the big news, big beautiful bill was up for a vote in the House. It passed the House by a narrow margin. How did you vote on it?
Oh, I voted yes. Let me tell you, this is one of the most consequential votes that we've ever had. It's a generational event whenever you are saving taxpayers from the highest tax increase ever that they would have ever experienced. 88% of Georgians would have seen a tax increase if we did not extend the tax cuts from the first administration. And we can ill afford that in our economy right now. This is a promise that President Trump made that we delivered on in the House. Now it's up to the Senate. And I call on our senators, John Ossoff and Raphael Warnock. They need to vote for this bill. We need to get this through the Senate, get it to the president's desk, get it signed into law so that Georgians will not experience the highest tax increase that they've ever had.
This is a more than 1,000-page bill, right?
Yes.
I recall when you and I chatted about a year ago on the Georgia vote, we talked about how big some of these bills get. And instead of tackling one topic at a time, Congress has a habit of putting together a bunch of different issues into one big bill, or I guess a big, beautiful bill in this case.
That's
But
correct.
puts it all together in one bill. Is that the best, most efficient way to legislate?
Well, if you look at the process that we used, I'm on the budget committee, and we on the budget committee, we came up with the budget resolution, the reconciliation resolution. We identified a target for each of the committees to achieve, and they did that. Also on the Energy and Commerce Committee and chair of the Health Subcommittee. We were charged with the most of any committee in Congress. In fact, our committee as a whole saved over $980 billion. The Health Subcommittee that I'm chair of saved over $800 billion. That's over half of the total savings. So to say that I don't know the bill would be erroneous because over half of the savings came from my subcommittee that I chair. So I know that like the back of my hands. And then the other parts of it, we studied. We had on the budget committee, once the committees did their work, we brought it back together. And we described it as stapling it together, putting it in a package, and then sending it on to the House, and that's what we passed.
Now, I know that Republicans supported this bill. Democrats, your Democratic colleagues, they strongly opposed it. I want to ask you about some of the criticism of this bill that we've heard, and I know you've heard as well. And some of it is focused on Medicaid, on health care coverage, and food stamp coverage as well. So I just want to give you a little bit of data and get your thoughts on it here. So the nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office estimated that this bill nationwide, if passed, would lead to about 8.6 million fewer people having health care coverage, about 3 million people per month losing food stamp benefits through SNAP. Does that concern you?
It doesn't concern me because, as I said, Medicaid is what we were in charge of in my subcommittee. And what we did with Medicaid is we strengthened Medicaid, we stabilized it, we saved it, a program that's intended for the most vulnerable in our society. Did you know that there's a waiting list for people to get on the Medicaid, people who truly deserve it? And what we did is we're going to make sure there are no illegals on Medicaid. We're going to make sure that the people who are on Medicaid should be on Medicaid. And if they're not, we're going to move them to another product, another insurance coverage in the Affordable Care Act. And that's what we're going to try to do. We also had, we're going to check eligibility more often. Instead of checking it once a year, we're going to check it twice a year and make sure that the people who are getting that benefit are indeed supposed to be getting it. We also have work requirements so that able-bodied adults who don't have children that they're taking care of or don't have an adult who they're taking care of, they can volunteer or they can get a job working 20 hours a week, helping them to rise above this and to go to the next level. That's what we want to do. Same thing with the SNAP. As with the SNAP benefits, yes, there are requirements in there to try to help people to achieve an even better life.
Some people will argue that these kind of cuts are impacting people who are already some of the most vulnerable in the country. And those kind of people, they'll argue, shouldn't be the ones who bear the brunt of these cuts. What do you say to that?
Well, that's why I say you are exactly right. Medicaid and SNAP, they're intended for the most vulnerable in our society. That's why we need to make sure there's no waste, fraud, and abuse. That's why we need to make sure that the people who are getting these benefits truly need these benefits, because we got people who are waiting in line to get them. We want to make sure those people can get them, and that we don't have illegals on Medicaid, that we don't have able-bodied adults who shouldn't be on there. Those are the type of things that we addressed, and those are the type of savings that we have in this reconciliation bill.
How many illegal immigrants are on Medicaid right now?
The exact number escapes me. It was well over 1 million, but the state of California is actually paying for, and they say they're using state dollars to pay for illegals to be on Medicaid. Illegals should not be on an American federal government program. And they say, well, we're using state dollars. Yeah, you're using state dollars. You're using federal dollars to replace those state dollars you ought to be using on the Medicaid program.
I want to ask you two last questions because I'm watching the clock and I know you got a plane to catch. I want to get your thoughts and your message to your Senate colleagues in a moment. But while we're talking about cost and benefits, I want to ask you this as well. The nonpartisan CBO estimates that if this bill is passed, it will increase the federal deficit over the next decade by more than $3 trillion. Is that an efficient use of taxpayer dollars?
Well, first of all, the CBO is notorious for not being right. They've been wrong more than they've been right. Is it going to increase the deficit? Yes, we need deficit reduction. That's why I have proposed that we do another bill, not to extend tax cuts, but just for deficit reduction. There are more changes that can be made, more reforms that can be made to SNAP and to Medicaid without hurting anyone, but to make the programs more efficient for the most vulnerable who truly need it, while helping to lower our deficit.
If you'll permit me, I want to dwell here for just a moment because I think there has been some conversations among some of your colleagues in the Republican caucus and even among Georgia's Republican delegation in the United States House of Representatives. You say you want to see the deficit reduced. You admit that this bill, if passed, will probably increase the deficit. Aren't those priorities pointing in different directions?
Well, this bill may increase the deficit, but it would not increase it as much as if we had not done it. So we actually are going to have a lower increase, a smaller increase than if we had not done anything at all. Now, look, we need to address the deficit. Nobody disputes that. There's no question about that. We've got not a revenue problem in Washington, D.C. We've got a spending problem, and we need to address spending. This is a good start. Is it a perfect bill? No. I've never seen a perfect bill, but it is a daggum good start.
This is still not over the finish line. You guys worked all night long in the House. Democrats very much wanted it to not pass. Republicans got it over the line. Speaker Johnson, it was a big priority of his, a big priority of President Trump's. I know you've been a supporter. This bill clears the House. Now it goes over to the Senate. What's your message to your Republican colleagues in the Senate?
We need to pass this bill. We need to get it on the president's desk. We need to make sure it's signed into law so that Georgians and Americans don't face the highest tax increase that they would have ever seen. If we can get this done, we can avoid that. Our economy will be humming if we get this done. Just like it was during the first Trump administration, it'll be doing it again.
Congressman Buddy Carter, always appreciate your time. Travel safe, sir.
Thank you.